Another incredible performance going down today by Magnus Carlsen. I mean, honestly, Robert, you and I talked about the fact that, I mean, okay, just from a pure matchup perspective, knowing what we know about Grischuk, we thought this would be a much closer match as compared to Magnus Carlsen's performance against Wesley So. But right now, Carlsen is just, I mean, can the man be stopped? I mean, this is maybe go down as one of the best months ever, right? I mean, his performances in these Rapid and Blitz events this month have just been out of this world.
Yeah, he's proving why he's the best player on the planet, but nobody, I mean, I bet you even he didn't expect that he would dominate such strong players as convincingly as he has. And I believe this is the 8th game in a 5-minute time control. That has to be one of the shortest, if not the shortest match in Speed Chess Championship history.
Which is the opposite of what we had between Carlsen and So on Saturday, right? I think we ended up having a 13-game 5-minute portion. So tale of two time management sessions, but it doesn't matter. It seems to be the same results for Carlsen either way, with a huge lead right now.
Right, and if we get into the position that we have on the board, we start off, as 960, so it's quite random. But for now, it looks kind of like White has an English structure, right? Knight on d5, pawn on c4, bishop on this long diagonal. Well, both bishops on the long diagonal right now. And actually, what I don't like about Black's setup is the bishop on d8 will find it difficult to get over to f6 or g7, especially with this knight on d5. Mm-hmm. Because, look at the bishop on a1 staring down the queen on h8. Not exactly a good strategy for the queen.
Yeah, not exactly a happy neighbor. Like the kind of neighbor that stares you down and you know they're about to smile, and the other neighbor that stares you down is judging you the whole time. That's what's going on here.
Well, now after bishop f6, you can even consider just snatching that piece up.
Bishop pair. Bishop pair. Oh, no.
Well, this is actually
I guess he's going to play knight g3 and then Rekharovka, drop the king on g1, and he's going to fix the only remaining dysfunctional aspect of White's setup, which is that the king and rook are kind of awkward maybe. Yeah, time to get castled and leave the d3 square behind, because here comes Black.
Yeah, though castling, you do have to be worried about an eventual h5 move, right? Just trying to blast open that side of the board.
I'll take my chances with, if I castle, they play h5, I'll play g5, right? Feels like I can get the f6 square.
Whoa.
King e2. Wait. Magnus using the chess 960 setup says I'm not even gonna castle.
So I wanted to go e4, but you can just capture on e4, so it doesn't actually do anything.
Yep.
But you always have to keep an eye on that move with all the tension on that long diagonal. So how do you improve your position as Black here? I guess King e2 might just be the best move. I mean,
it honestly looks fantastic. That's the truth.
And now White consider going b4 and then b5 and take, just expanding on the
I really still like the threat of g5 coming. And even if I'm not, one idea of g5 and then b4, Robert, is that frees up the e4 square so that White's other knight can get involved in the f6 party. But even if I don't get that idea, g5 and I put the knight on f6, I can win the dark square bishop. It feels like White has very good long-term attacking chances here.
Right, and the reason I was hesitant to play g5 initially, from White's point of view, so I was thinking, h6, and you might be forced to trade queens, but the queen trade actually helps White, because g5, h6, h4, and White is clearly first to that h file. So Black needs to consider what to do about this king. You can't castle queenside. You are able to castle queenside, but it is a bad move, because then b4, b5, knight e7 check will be quite painful. So yeah, not looking pretty for Black. And as we see,
that almost sounds like you're about to bust out rap along with Carlsen and Eminem right after this.
Well, we were talking about rap before we went out live, so you got some stuck in my head.
No, but look how long King A2 made Grischuk think before.
Okay, what about B4, B5 now? Doesn't
bring the pain on the B spot?
It looks pretty natural to me. I think if they're b4, you're forced to sacrifice pawn to e4, because otherwise it's b4, knight e6, b5.
I love it.
It's resignable.
Also, there's knight e7. Oh, yeah, I think that's why e4 was played, because there was knight e7 check coming, perhaps. And
yeah, b5 first, right? Just kick that knight out, get that check in, disastrous. But now just knight takes e4. It's a free pawn.
Yep. Yeah, if the knight had moved everybody before e4. There's threats of b5 and then knight e7 check, picking up the bishop over here on a8. So that was kind of Robert's point of the b pawn push. And wow, Magnus is giving the light square bishop with check, no less. But I guess if black takes it, white takes back, and after the trade, Magnus will take on c5 at the end and then maybe pop a pony into f6, a nice little outpost square.
Yeah, then you can also just consider going rook b1, rook b3, rook other rook to b1 and try and deliver.
That's a nice move there by Grischuk, though. Rook e8, I think you have to just leave the tension. Don't even bother taking the c-pawn. And Magnus is going to try to simplify the position.
So takes. We guess rook e6, knight d4 check, to f3 is coming.
Yeah, perhaps, I'm liking Grischuk's pieces coming to life here. Magnus should gobble h7 probably, though. Just go get a pawn, maybe.
I think Magnus tried to oversimplify. He's like, well, my position is so strong, and it is, right? Like, if you look at it, optically speaking, white's position is amazing. Right. However, there's clear tactics at play with knight d4 check, opening that bishop on a8, knight f3 comes, seeing the rook on g1, and both pawns on d2 and h2. So actually, Grischuk is he's kind of changing the dynamics of his position in his favor. Because taking on h7 might lose the knight. Knight d4 check, knight f3, and then rook over to h8. Your knight in h7 is trapped.
Ooh, I didn't see that. The knight comes to f3 with tempo, everybody, hitting the rook, and now taking away the g5 square. Makes this move rook h8 a devastating threat. I like that line, partner. Yeah, I agree. This is getting tasty here. Be funny if Grischuk wins one position where he was completely worse as black in chess 960, rather than the 3 games where he was clearly better in the regular classical portion. But you got to take him where you can get him at this point if you're Sasha Grischuk. Got to get a win.
Although the pawn structure might get really weird because knight d4 check. Okay, didn't go knight d4. I thought he was going to go knight d4. E takes d4.
White should just play f3 here, f3, d3, do something to defend the knight so that your h7, so your f6 knight is free again. Yeah, I like d3. Maybe even f3 was fine, but...
Yeah, taking on c5 was very questionable. He should have gone knight d4 check. And again, I say this every time I do commentary. It's one of those positions where quality of pieces is more important than the quantity of pawns because you might have been down a pawn temporarily, but all of white's pawns are in weird squares, and your rook was about to get active on the e4 square if all those trades occurred. So now, I mean, okay, black's still hanging in there because rook a6 will be annoying at the right moment. And not to mention that you can consider capturing on e4. But let's see.
Yeah, I agree. But again, I mean, I would classify not taking the opportunity to play 16 knight d4 because knight d4, king d3, knight f3 with tempo. Then there would have been threats of knight e5 check, again, followed by just the threats against these 2 knights who are trying to guard each other. And it, again, puts us in a position to feel like with aggressive opportunities on the board, Grischuk is being much more defensive-minded than he is being aggressive. And Magnus is taking advantage of that. I mean, on a practical level, Magnus is pushing and creating weird dynamic tactics, even if they're not 100% sound for him.
Yeah, speaking of not 100% sound.
Yeah, this move, knight there's no way Grischuk isn't just better after rook takes d7. He's going to get 2 pieces for the rook.
Yeah, rook d7, knight c5, rook b6. I wonder if he missed after knight takes d7, there's rook b2 check first. Because if you don't get that check in first, then, okay, white will go rook b1 and try to trade rooks. And, I mean, white will have a rook and 2 pawns for 2 minor pieces, but with the threat of rook b2 check, forcing the king onto the back rank, then the 2 pieces are just going to bring home the full point. And
so here's a moment again where Grischuk is taking 40 seconds to play the less than ideal approach here. I feel like there's almost a giving Magnus too much credit. This is what happens, I guess, when you win blitz matches by 20 games, you kind of intimidate your peers maybe. It just doesn't feel like Grischuk is calculating all these lines as accurately as we know he normally does.
But Danny, I just don't understand it at all. Because
I don't understand it all. Now white gets rook b1, and right, white's going to grab the only open file and have very good chances here with the rook and a bunch of pawns.
Well, my essential question is, in what universe is the rook on d8 better than the rook on d6, right? Even if you didn't see rook b6 initially, that rook is swinging to a6. This rook on d8 is doing nothing.
Well, I mean, his idea had to be to just get an active king, right? We know you want a more active king in endgames, but I agree with you that the more these pawns get the center, there's no way this king can compete with those pawns and those squares anyway. And white's just, I mean, there's threats here of rook g5. There's threats here of rook b1. There's threats here of c5 check, and then king e3 and just push another pawn and get a massive, massive center storm going. So, I mean, all in all now, between rook g7, rook g5, c5 check, King E3, yeah, and then play D4 and D5 or something. I mean, white just feels in total control here.
Yeah. No, this is not going well for Grischuk at all. And I just want to give a shout out to What a Noobs in the Twitch chat. Hess judging Grischuk's moves, he would get wrecked 30-0 by Grischuk. I gotta respect people who call me out for calling others out.
I don't know what players expect, but isn't it your job, our job, to do commentary? But of course, I mean, a blunder is a blunder regardless of who plays it. Everybody, that's a fact. Anyway, yeah, no, it seems that Carlsen is really going to show us how a rook would outplay minors. This is the kind of position, everybody, to offer some instructional takeaways. You have open files on both sides of the board. Okay, so that's like a warning sign you can add to that little database of knowledge. When will rooks be better than minors? You have numerous open files. You have numerous pawn weaknesses: H5, E6, C7, A7, and finally you have the potential to create your own passed pawns. The types of positions where rooks will do well is obviously it's self-explanatory. Files where they can swing from one side of the board to the other. When there's pawns to target, the minor pieces would rather have all the pawns in one little grouping, a pawn island, if you will, so they can maneuver and work together. This situation is just one where the rooks are kind of made to outplay the minors. And Robert, what do you say? Is that a fair description? Although now it looks like Magnus just blundered.
No, Magnus didn't blunder. He purposely was giving up. Well, I didn't like the move. I don't know if I love what just happened there, but I was going to say, I don't think he blundered. He intentionally went for a line where he would give up the rook for the knight because he felt that he couldn't make easy progress and said, okay, my pawns are going to push forward and win the game. But now I think black is better because pawns aren't that quick. And in fact, if
just as I'm highlighting how the rooks could be better than the minors, Magnus makes a sacrifice of the piece. And so, well, he may live to regret that. I think the rooks were doing very well there.
Yeah, now in fact it's only one pawn for the piece, and they're very passed pawns. But you can't actually go F7 with his A5 pawn.
Well, maybe you can because you rushed the E pawn and queen would check. F7 takes everything. A3 E6, A2 E7 check.
But F7 is bishop D7 checkmate now.
Oh, so. Sweet! He mates him in the middle of the board, and Grischuk wins a game. and Magnus jumps back and makes a funny face. You gotta love Magnus for bringing the entertainment there, Robert. And
he completely overlooked it.
He completely overlooked it, and there's absolutely no denying it on his face. That was pretty funny. As he gets up and takes a break, so will we, and do a quick summary of what we've seen so far. Even with that game.